G'day, welcome to Pay It Forward. And yes, that's correct, that is a big crab on my shoulder. I have had this little one sitting in the drawing stages on my desk for a long while, and I thought it was about time we brought him to life. And he is a beautiful crab and absolutely the best bed sitter ever. I dived into my stash, and I know you've all been asking for fabric only patterns, so that's what we've got here. Fantastic little pattern, absolutely perfect for making up for on selling and for fetes and fairs and so on in your craft markets. I do encourage you to make and sell product from any of my patterns. You just can't sell the pattern itself, but you can certainly sell your product. So he's a beautiful little guy, and he's very, very simple to make and easily made up in a morning or an afternoon. So I have your free pattern all ready for you, and you just need to find that link. It is in the description drop down box below. There's a little arrow there in the corner of your screen that will open that up for you. You'll find that link and you can print out your free pattern templates on your own home printer. When you go to do that, do set your printer to be printing at actual size, perhaps A4 or even letter. So try those. There's a measuring bar on every page, so you'll be able to check to make sure that your pattern pieces are right. And you do need to remember that I include all of my seam allowances within your patterns, so you just have to cut those out on the line. So let's get busy making my little cranky crab. So check your materials and requirements at the start of this video in the description box for all of the details, but we're going to start with our base shell pattern pieces, and first we're going to add our fusible foam. You've got your templates for those. If you don't want to use foam, you can use quilt wadding, that's not a problem. You want to fuse those into place with a hot iron and a protective cloth. And we're going to do the same with those top shell pieces as well. Just make sure you've got a nice space around all of them. So we've got those fused into place now. You can see there, and on the base as well. So what we're going to do, what I like to do first, because I'm using safety eyes and I'm pretty sure of my sewing, so I'm going to add the eye holes now. I have given you the marks on your template pieces for you to be able to do that, and I have cut mine a little larger because when you're using these very large safety eyes, they do have a very large shank on them. So I've cut them out. Now, if you're in any way unsure about your sewing, you can go ahead and make it all up first, but you can see there mine's just going to fit that shank beautifully, and I'm going to be sure to make sure everything is lined up. If you sew that up and haven't got everything lined up, your eye positioning could possibly be not quite right, so you can do it the other way, totally up to you. So mine is all set and ready, and as you can see, next step is to put our right sides together. We're going to start to put this top shell together. We're going to line up that center top seam, and we're going to be sewing a 4mm seam allowance. I have my machine stitch set to number 2. I'm going to sew that 2 times, making sure that I back and forth on my start and finish, of course. And I am using a jeans needle in my machine also. We're then going to do the same with our center back seam on our base piece. Once we've done that top piece, you can see we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put right sides together, and of course we're going to leave that section open. So I have already zigzagged my openings so that they won't stretch or fray, and we're just going to stitch back and forth from those start and finish of those openings so that they don't fray away. So now I've got those seams sewn, I've taken them to the iron and I've pressed them all out open and flat. You're going to get a much smoother curve if you do that. It's definitely worth doing. Perfect finish is really, really important. So we can put that aside now, and we're going to look at making those 8 legs. So they're little legs, we'll call them legs. The way that we do that is we fold 2 pieces of fabric right sides together. You can see that I have just taken my pattern template and I haven't added any interfacing or anything to these pieces, just plain fabric, and we're just going to trace around our template shape, and then we're going to stitch directly on that line. Make sure you're back and forth on your start and finish, and then we're going to cut that out with a very small seam. So you can see now that I've turned that one through and we're ready to add some filling. Make sure that you do push out all of your seams and roll those seams out. We want a lovely finish there. And now I'm just going to start filling these with my polyester filling. It's easiest to do with forceps, and you can see I'm just going to fill that end very carefully first. I do feel them quite firm, but be careful because we've got no interfacing there. Be careful to protect that end. It would be a tragedy to put your forceps straight through the end. It has happened. So we just want to pack that nice and firm almost all the way until about 2 centimeters from the top, where I don't put any filling at all. And then I just am going to take that and flatten it at the end, bring those edges together, and I'm going to stitch across there on my machine. And that's going to hold it all together. So now I'm back and I've got all of my little legs there ready, and we're going to add those first of all to our base, our completed base. Now you can see I've already done that on one side and just stitch them in within that seam allowance. When I flip that over, that's the beautiful effect we're going to get. Super simple to do. And when we pull them back in, of course, they look like a bit of a jumbled mess, but once they're flipped out, they'll be fine. You can see that mark on your pattern template on the underside. That's where your first leg gets stitched in. You can see that there. It's going to start exactly on that spot. And I like to just take it to my machine and stitch that first one in place. And it is just within the seam allowance, and then I add the second one. And I continue on. You do have to lay them on top of each other a little bit. You can see how they get all crumpled up there. And then that effect when they're flipped over. But just add one at a time, one after the other, until they're all in place, and then stitch that in place. Do make sure that you catch all those edges, because we really want them all to be well incorporated within that seam. So now I have them all stitched into place, and you can see that they're that lovely little jumbled mess there. You do need to make sure too that you've got them going the right way. So make sure that they're all curving down and outwards. I don't want to see any little crabs with their legs going the other way. So once you've got them all nicely into place, you can see that beautiful result. So now we're going to put that shell section together. We're going to take our top shell piece, pop that one out, and the most important thing is that we're going to match up our center seams. So our center seam junctions at the back on the top shell piece, and we really want to make sure they're lined up for that gorgeous finish. You will find that everything will fit together beautifully. Clips are perfect for this. So now I'm going to do the same at the front and really make sure that junction is exact, the perfect little meet, because you do see these little details, particularly at the front here. Pop that clip in place, and then it's just a matter of making your way around. You have to be careful to make sure that all of those little legs are tucked in there as well. They will all fit in there. I'm just going to carefully match those edges. If you've kept all of your seam allowances, you'll find that this will all come together just perfectly. Adding my clips there, being very careful through this section here to make sure that your edges are all meeting and that those little legs are well incorporated into the seam. I do sew this seam 2 times, but I do sew over those leg sections an extra time just to make absolutely sure. So I'm just going to continue on clipping that into place right the way around, tuck it in on the other side, and then I will get that completely stitched into place. Now I like to overcast it first, it just makes it easier. You're avoiding all of those pins and clips, and you'll find that you'll get all of those legs incorporated well the first time. So that's my crab all turned through that base opening, and we've got, let's take a minute to look at those beautiful legs. It's so exciting when they all pop out. And so that's come together really well. You do need to check that you have caught every one of those leg edges and that there's no frayed bits. Everything is as it should be. And make sure too that all of those seams are nicely pushed out. I did add my joint marks for my claws before I turned it through. And now we're going to go ahead and get ready to add the eyes. So the eyes are a 30mm plastic glass eye, but I've added some glitter foam to the back first. So I've simply taken some glitter foam, used a hole punch to punch a hole through. Then what I do is take my clear craft glue and just glue up the back of the eye, just on the underneath there. Glue that up and then pop that actually through the hole and really press that down. You want to really pack that down around the shank of the eye so that's glued very tight. So you can see here with this one, it's all pushed up nice and tight, and then I've let that dry. That's been drying for, it's been drying overnight, so it's nice and strong. And now I can just take my scissors and scissor that all off. And you'll get a beautiful clean edge. It's a great way to decorate a clear glass eye. Now you might be lucky enough to find these 30mm glass eyes in a colour already. I used to have some years ago, but you can alternatively put a piece of fabric behind it, a piece of felt, whatever you like. If you can't find eyes this big, you can alternatively use a 30mm button and double it up with another button, and you'll get a nice domed sort of effect. So that's my eye all ready to go, and now I just need to make that little hooded eyelid cap, which is super simple. So we've got our 2 pieces of felt which has fusible webbing applied. I've applied the fusible webbing, that's just for strength, not for actually fusing. I've got the hole already made, and it's quite a big one for mine because the shanks of my eyes are quite big. So that's removing the paper. Just take the paper off of my eyelid part, and we're going to sew these together. Now the best way to explain that to you is that you have both of the right sides facing you, so that when we sew it together and flip it over, it's actually going to be correct. So both of the right sides are facing you, and we pop that one in behind, and we're just going to sew. I'm using my extra strong thread. I'm just going to sew an overcasting stitch to hold that top section in place. Then I will take it to the machine and just stitch from the base all the way around. Make sure you're back and forth on the start and finish, and then we will just be able to pop that one over and turn it through just like the other one that we have here. So there's my 2 eyes ready to go, and we're actually ready to add those to our crab, which is simple to do because we've got that opening. Now there's a few ways that we can add these to give different expressions, so depending on how we shape them and how we add them. So we can first do them just absolutely straight across. That's quite a normal sort of an expression. We can tilt them inwards and with the sides going upwards, and that gives us more of a severe expression, bit of a cranky crab. Or you can just, as I said, just make it normal and neutral, or you can tip them over and it's more of a winsome sort of a look, a little bashful, sleepy sort of a look. Totally up to you what you do. I'm going to go for a bit of a cranky crab on mine. I feel like most crabs I've ever met are cranky. Probably because my doggos are with me and we find them on the beach. So that's the look I'm going to go for. When we're going to put them in, if you feel like you're concerned with losing the direction that that's sitting, you can use a little bit of craft glue first on the back of your eye to hold it into place before you put that clamp on the back. And I do that for sure. Just that little bit of craft glue there will hold it where I want it, and then I'll go ahead from the underneath and add that clamp. When you go to do that and you add that clamp, do make sure that you put something underneath to protect that acrylic eye, because you don't want that eye getting messed up and scratched up. So there we go, we've got the eyes in place, and he does look a little severe, but that's just what I was looking for. And now we're ready to add those beautiful claws. I've got to make my second one. So let's get started putting those together. So we have our 2 little arm pieces, and our claw pieces are added on the end of that, on the thicker end. And make sure that those claws are being put on in the right way. You can see there how I've got them, those 2 little arm shapes scooping up. We're going to put right sides together, and the first step, of course, is to stitch straight across with our 4mm seam allowance on both of them, and I'm going to sew that one 2 times. So now that I've done that, I've pressed those seams open and flat, and it's really worth doing that because it just gives you a much better finish, and it actually makes it easier for you to put the whole thing together. So we're going to line those up, and as always, when we're lining up pieces like this which have joins, we always connect up those joins first to make sure that they are in the right spot, so that we get a beautiful finish like on this one, exactly as it should be. And then we're going to do the same on the other side, pop that clip into place there, and then we continue on, and we're just going to make sure everything is lined up right the way around. We're going to leave the end open, of course. This end is left open for us to stuff and fill, and we're going to stitch right the way around. Now I like to overcast mine first. It does make it easier, and then I can remove all of my clips and pins. When you do get to the claw section and you go to machine that claw section, when you stitch up here, don't go up fully to a point. Stitch up and then do 2 stitches across to square it off, and then back down. I'll show you that in a minute when I finish putting mine together. It does turn through better and give us a better finish in that little tight junction there. So there we have that all stitched up, and you can see there, I'll show you the little join at the top there. So straight up, 2 stitches across and down, and all we need to do now is just turn this one through. But first I'm going to snip those edges, those little points, and I'm going to cut into the corners of our little square section there, and that is going to help me turn that one through and get a gorgeous result. Now that we have that one all turned through, make sure you do get in there and push all those seams out and all of those points. We're ready to fill that little claw. So, and again, this is best done with forceps if you have them. We're going to take that stuffing right down, and I'm going to start with that largest claw point there. I'm going to super pack that in. I'll do the same with the other little claw here, and I'm just going to work my way up right through that arm. I'm going to pack this nice and firm right up until just a little way from the edge, because we're going to be adding our joint in there, just like I have with this one. We're going to be drawing it in around that joint. Do use your wool felting needle to pack that in nice and flat as you get there, and you can see with this one just how firm that is right up to the end there. And you can see there that I've got that arm nicely filled up, and I've packed all of that filling in nice and flat, ready for our joint. I've now taken a doubled strand of extra strong thread and sewn a running stitch just 4 millimeters in from the edge all the way around, and I've just tied my first knot because I've left my tail ends hanging so I can tie it off. Now I'm going to take my joint, I'm going to slip that in. It is a nice snug fit. Pop that in there. Squeeze that down, and then I can take my thread ends. I'm going to be able to pull that in nice and snug. It should come into right around that bolt. Knot that off at least 4 times. We are now ready to add those claws to our crab. So we're going to do that by taking each of those claws. We can come in that underneath section. I'd already made my holes ready to add that claw, and I've just taken that bolt straight through that hole. You want to make sure that all the fabric is pushed down around the bolt. It's a bit hard to see in here. And there we go. Make sure it's all pushed down. We're going to add our corresponding disc and washer and bolt. I'm just going to finger tighten it at this stage so that I can check that I've got all of the fabric pulled out nice and straight where that joint is. And I want to continue to do that up. Check it again, and then I'll go ahead with my spanner or my forceps and just tighten that up. You want it nice and firm, but you should still be able to just move it. Once you've got that as tight as you like, you can then go ahead and add a drop of super glue just into the threads where that nut is, and then that nut will never come adrift. Then we just go ahead and do the same with the other one on the opposite side. Now, if you're going to be sewing these on, the way that we packed that all in with our felting needle and then we drew in around it, you would still do that. Still make it nice and flat, draw that right in, and then you're going to go ahead and stuff your crab before you finally sew on those claw pieces. So just done in a slightly different way. I do recommend that you give jointing a go. It is really the easiest way to add pieces. So I'm going to get that second one into place. And so there we go, and we have our crab now ready to stuff. He's got those beautiful claws in place. As I said, if you're going to sew those on, you need to stuff the body first. So we're going to turn him over and we're going to fill him up. Now, because we've controlled that whole situation with our foam and our wadding, we're not going to have too many problems keeping that lovely shape and keeping it nice and flat and disc-like. But you can see that I'm just going to be adding stuffing all around the edge first. It's easy to do with your hands because I've left that opening nice and big for you. So we can just fill out that important outer edge first, right the way around, and particularly the little bottom section, if crabs have bottoms. I assume most things have bottoms. And tuck that all in there, make my way right the way around, watching from the top all the time. We want to get this all filled out, particularly around those joints. And then we're just going to continue to add in that manner. We're going to be tucking in and keeping it flat. We're not just pushing it into the center. So all the way around, keep filling this little guy all the way around like that. And then in the end, finally, we can pop some in straight so that we make sure we lift out that top gentle curve. And the finished effect should be that it's pretty much the shape he is now, just with a little bit more volume. So I'm going to get that done and I'll show you how it should look. And that has my crab filled, and this is how he should look. So he's quite flattened, he's just filled out, and that's all. And on the base too, kept it all nice and flat. You can see while it's quite firm, there's still plenty of squish there. So we are going to now close that base opening. Now you've got a couple of points. You've got your front nose point and your bottom point there that you can't quite get to with your filling until you start to close this opening. So what I recommend is that we start filling, and once you get it almost closed, you can go in there with a bit more stuffing and fill those two front points before you finally close. So I have a strand of extra strong thread. I've got a whole pile of knots in the end. We're going to close this with a ladder stitch. I'm coming in from the underneath, right where that seam starts to open out. And I've just pulled that through to the knot. Now we're going to travel across, straight across, and we're going to dive in exactly the same spot on the opposite side, and we're going to travel down in the seam allowance just the length of one stitch. So we've got one stitch going across here. We can pull that in, see that that can pull in already. Then I'm going to dive back into the same hole that I first started with and travel down the length of one stitch. I'm going to pull that in, and we can start to see those edges coming together. We're going to go back over to the other side, and we're going to go into that last exit hole. This is what we're going to do each time. Travel down the length of one stitch, pull that together, and it will start to pull in. Come in just a little closer for you to see there. I'm going back into that hole, travel down the length of one stitch, and coming across. Give it a squeeze and pull it together. So we're going to go back over into the exit hole each time, and that keeps this stitch all fully linked. And it's very, very strong. I will put a link to the video that I have that shows you how to do this stitch up close and personal, and you'll be able to check that out as well, but it's pretty straightforward. Just carry on until we get down to here. As I said, if you've got some room to add a bit more filling at either top and tail, go right ahead, and then we will be done. And so that, my friends, completes our beautiful cranky crab. Well, mine is cranky. You can make this one up, of course, in any colours. I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to come up with. It's very rare that I finish a project and want to make it all again. But I certainly have enjoyed making this one. I'd love to make him up in more colours. I'm afraid I don't have the time. There won't be more videos if I do that. So I'll leave it to you all to experiment with him and show me your creations on our Facebook page. I'll look forward to seeing them. Do try him in girly colours. He would look fabulous made up in florals as well. And what an incredible bed sitter, hey? So, and he's such a great size. So I've really enjoyed him. I hope you have too. The good thing about giving him joints in those little claws is he can give you a wave goodbye or a salute. So thank you all for joining me. So I just know that some of you are already thinking Christmas presents for all of the boys. Tick. This one definitely ticks the boxes, doesn't it, for little boys? Sometimes it's hard to make for little boys. I tend to be drawn to little girly fabrics. I don't know about you, but this one will be perfect. So make some and stash them away ready. In the meantime, if you want to chat to me on one-on-one, by all means, contact me via my Instagram. There's my Instagram address across the bottom there. It's the best way to capture my attention. I want to see all of your creations, everything that you're making with my patterns. It encourages me to keep on designing for all of you, which you know I love to do. So come and join us on our Facebook page and you can share all of your beautiful creations. We can encourage you and that encourages us. So we're a friendly bunch there. Come and join us. If you do want to step up, we now have Pooh Bear and Piglet up, just released on Masterclass. Thank you everybody for your kind comments. I hope you enjoy him this month, everybody who's with me. If you'd like to join, that link will be down below as well. So have a fantastic creative week, everybody. I want to see our Facebook page swarming with little colourful crabs. And until then, stay safe and everybody keep on paying those good things forward. Until next time, it is hooroo from me.